Leaders keep calling people back to the office like culture's hiding behind the break room fridge, whatever that means. Hate to break it to you, but your culture doesn't live in the square footage in your building. It lives in how people are treating one another, how they're interacting with each other across Slack, across emails during meetings. Let's unpack why that return to office doesn't equal a return to culture or even a repair of your culture. So here's the wild part. Gallup actually found that only 19% of fully in office employees are actually feeling engaged in part of the workforce. Now, compared to 31% of remote workers. So, if proximity built culture, then those numbers would absolutely be reversed. So, welcome to the Generational Edge with Christina Green, where we turn cross generation friction into fuel, right? Let this fuel your culture. I'm your host, Christina Green, your generational translator. And today we're tackling one of the biggest leadership myths that are out there today, certainly since COVID, that bringing people back into the office will magically fix their culture. It's a magic wand, not. My guest today is Melanie White. And she has been in the trenches helping leaders to figure out what connection really looks like in this hybrid environment. She is the founder and CEO of Sisyphus HR and widely known as the HR fixer. I love that. She's led multi-million dollar transformations and somehow still makes HR feel human. She's here to remind us that dragging people back into the office doesn't rebuild culture, it just rebuilds traffic. Melanie, welcome to the Generational Edge. I am so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
So, before we dive in, Melanie, what's one outdated belief about culture that you think that leaders really need to let go?
Well, the first thing is the leaders think that they drive culture, and they don't. The culture is driven by the employees. And if they continue to try to control the culture, they're they're putting in something that's not real. And a culture has to be organic. Well, it should be organic if it's going to feel good. Now, if you want to have a culture of control, that's what it's going to be. And the way that you lead, the way that you manage, the way that you treat people is the first step in identifying the culture. And that is the core element. If the leaders are trying to lead the culture, they're losing visibility and traction every single minute.
Absolutely. And oftentimes that control, that feel to want to bring people in, right, is rooted in control. And there is this misalignment with thinking that control builds trust, but they feel that they then can trust their teams, but they completely miss the fact that trust is bidirectional, that it
Yeah.
needs to be earned, it needs to be given, right? It's something
Yeah.
that is built over time and not something that's manufactured. So, did you know that according to Forbes, that 61% of employees say the lack of trust from their leadership is affecting how well they can do their jobs? So, that's not a surprising statistic for me because I
Mhm.
think having been, right, we both are in the workforce, have been in leadership roles. Does that figure seem to ring true to you, especially what you're seeing across organizations now?
Absolutely. And that whole concept, it's an outdated leadership model.
Yeah.
A leadership model that was created in the 80s, the 1980s, so that anybody that is living in 2025 and might have been born before, after 2020, after 2000, there was a time when everything was about control. Everything in leadership was about control. And that trust was manufactured. And as we have evolved, as people have evolved, as new generations are coming into the workforce, they're teaching us new ways of developing trust, being transparent. And that for me was a challenge. Like in 2010-ish, I had to shift my leadership style because I was a top-down directive leader and
Mm.
was leading people who were like, yeah, we're not going for that. And I had to shift and learn how to trust my team in order for them to trust me. And so those statistics and those metrics don't surprise me, because if people aren't making the shift with the people they're leading, they're not leading them, they're just directing them. And that is something
Absolutely.
that can lead to a lot of problems. And that's what creates a toxic work environment. A leader who is not in tune with what's going on with their employees, recognizing what motivates their employees, what makes that team work. Those are the things that are going to really make the workforce culture and the workforce productivity really work together.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a really important point around, it's this evolution, right? Because I too have been a top-down leader, right?
Mhm.
Where I have
That's how we were taught.
micromanaged. Right. I've over-explained and all of those things, and to your point, it's because that's what we learned. We learned that that is the way that you move up in leadership. That is how you behave in the corporate environment, essentially is you follow authority, right? And when you become that quote authority, then you do the same thing. It's the playbook, right? It's the outdated playbook. I like to call it corporate parenting because we continue to parent our staff instead of actually taking them along on a journey that is more collaborative, right? So, where we need to evolve from the boardroom to the round table, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, Melanie, I love your idea around and especially your vulnerability around how this is how we have shown up for our teams before, right? And
Mhm.
how we've unintentionally been part of that culture that today we have language that we refer to as toxic. Now, when you see leaders, when you work with leaders and they say we're losing the control of our culture, what do you think they're actually thinking that they're losing?
They're losing their positioning, meaning they are feeling the push of moving them out of the organization, because as times change, if you're not changing with the times, you will eventually become obsolete. And so if you are feeling like you're losing control, and control is something that's important to you, and this world, this time, people are pushing against control. We've got a lot of things happening in our country, in our world, that are controlling, and people are pushing against that. And if you are still trying to hold on to that control and lead and get productivity, they're not going to work together. Something is going to push back. And if you're feeling like you're losing control, you are, because control is not something that you impose on somebody else. Control is actually given. That is something that your team, I am very proud that my teams have looked at me and been like, tell me what to do. And I can very comfortably say, well, what would you do? It's the development
Mhm.
of the mind, it's the development of the skill, it's the development of the team, so that the team can take over and function without that leader. And the leaders who feel like they still need to be in control and that they're losing control, it's that their teams are becoming more empowered, and it may not be because of that leader. And so those are the ways that those leaders feel discomfort in those scenarios. I recently read the book Let Them by Mel Robbins, and she had some amazing examples of control things that resonated with me, because, she was talking about her son going to the prom and not having a reservation for dinner. Like, as I read it, it caused me consternation, because I'm like, how can you be getting ready to go somewhere you don't have a reservation? If you don't have a reservation, you're not going to get a seat. And if you're not going to get a seat, you're never going to make it to the prom. Like, I went down that rabbit hole for her,
Right.
because those are the things that are important to me. But I have also had to learn. I have a sister who is neurodivergent and late diagnosed. And so I spent all my life being the big sister, trying to tell her what to do, not recognizing her whole world is completely different from mine. And I need to let her have the experience in this world that she's here to have. And I think that's an amazing and powerful leadership lesson, that we're not here to run other people. We were taught to micromanage because that was what allowed us to get ahead, being in control of the information, the data, providing the clear picture to our leadership teams. But if you learn to get to know your team, you still have the same data points and the same clear picture. It just comes to you in a different way. And so I had to learn that. And I think that is what allows me to be in control recovery, because I
Mm,
have new tools and a different skill set on how to get the same information that I need, because I am a quintessential. I need all of the information, all of the data points, all the statistics, all of the metrics in order to even function. But I need to be able to get that in a different way, because it sounds very punitive to say, tell me what you did, what time is that going to be done? Nobody wants to hear that. But if you talk about, well, what's going on in your day, how is that impacting the work, what support do you need, you get the whole story, you just get it a different
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah. I love your point around control recovery. I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to, because it's kind of like we recognize that it's not an on and off switch, right? That you
Not at
continue
all.
to feel this way, but you have to work through, and it's not the resistance. It's you have to work through the maybe what you have just learned and adapted to doing over time, and now we gotta learn a different way.
And
And
the
I
fear.
find that
It's
oh,
it's an
absolutely.
internal fear, and I think that more of us need to admit that we are scared,
Yes.
scared of letting go, scared of what not being in control looks like for us. If we were honest about that, that's where the change begins. That's
Yeah.
where, if we talk about our own fear, then that moves us forward in the conversation about dealing with what does it look like if I do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's time for a return to office wake up call, okay?
Mhm.
Because our return to office plans were supposed to bring everyone closer, or so people believed, right? But for a lot of teams, this just made that disconnect, that noise even louder, right? It
Mhm.
became a drum that was a low hum that we all heard, but more so, it's kind of you tuned at the ambient noise. You tuned it out because you're so conditioned to it. But as COVID, as we like to refer to as the Pandora's box of what was capable, right? What we were capable of executing, people became more effective, more efficient in this kind of remote setting. Now, it's not the same across the board. Not all roles, of course, translate into a remote environment. One common mistake that you see leaders are making with this return to the office mandate that is instantly killing their trust.
Well, and I experienced this in my last corporate role. You mandate that people have to come in the office. You might mandate core days that people need to come in the office, but you don't create a why. And a lunch and learn is not a good enough reason. Free lunch is not the same for people anymore. They're like, I had lunch in the kitchen. I
Amen.
don't need that. Are we investing in each other? Are we doing a team building exercise? What is the reason that we're here on Tuesday at 2 o'clock? Otherwise,
Facts.
I could have been at home in my pajamas getting actual work done. And that is what a lot of people I have worked with, my clients are saying, our my people are rebelling against this coming into the office. And I'm like, well, what do you have for them in the office that they can't do at home? Well, nothing. We just need to be here. We need to be able to talk to each other. We need to be able to team. People need to be able to walk up the aisle and talk to each other and get the information. We lost the water cooler conversation. Is that really happening now? People are frustrated and angry. If they're talking at the water cooler, they're talking about how long it took for them to get there, what they had to do to get dressed, the cost of dry cleaning so that they could look professional and come into the office. And then they come in, there's nothing specific to be done. So they're sitting there at a desk, probably doing much less than they would be doing if they were by themselves. Yes, there are a lot of high energy, extroverted people that want to be in the office. They should be in the office. They need to talk to each other. But there are a whole bunch of highly driven, high performing introverts who get a whole lot more done by themselves, and they are going to get it all done at home. Let them do that too. Again, with the understanding, if there is a reason to be in the office together, do it. I think that that
Yeah.
is phenomenal. Education, so that people hear the same message in the same way at the same time. Those things need to happen in person, because there's just a synergy that happens in a learning environment, and learning happens because you're picking up on other people's cues, the questions. People are much more apt to ask questions when they're in the room because somebody's going to look at them. Those are the things that I think bring people together because they went through something together. It's just like when you're in the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, you join a team, you play basketball, whatever. If you're doing those things together, it creates cohesion. But there's no cohesion if we come into the office, we sit at our desk, we still have to grind away at the same thing, and there's nothing that brings us together.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautifully said, and you had so many salient points there. In my experience, there's been a couple things that I've also too seen in addition to what you said, is that most leaders are not willing to own up to, which is there's the, hey, listen, we have a commercial lease on this property that's costing us $150,000 a month, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
pissing me off, every day that I don't see somebody in this office walk in these halls. We've got 10 floors, we've got 2,000 cubicles, offices, all of these things, and it's none of it's going to good use, right? So essentially we're making the owners of this commercial property just rich. This was money you were going to spend anyway. This was budget that you had that you were going to spend anyway. It's the evolution of the thought to say your team's being at home is not the reason why you have that cost, right? While you feel that way about that cost, is it's the higher value being placed on the performance of people being visible, right? Than on the actual production of work that's being done. Because if you start to look at, to your point, they are performing. They are performing at home or performing remotely. You just don't see them doing it, right? So if you don't see them working, if I don't see your fingers on the keyboard, then you must not be working. And that's part of that outdated playbook, right? That
It's
thinking
control.
that if I don't,
It's another form
absolutely.
of control.
Absolutely, right? And so, I mean, I've even told some leaders to say, listen, if the only reason that you want your team back in the office is because you feel some kind of way, right, around liability, around the lease that you have on your property, there's something to be said for leaning in with honesty to
Mhm.
say, listen, we spent a lot of money on building up this space. We would hate to see it not be utilized. Can we find a compromise, right? That allows us to not only utilize the space in a meaningful way for everyone, but also to allows us to be able to meet you where you are as well, right? You can have that honest conversation if you lead with authenticity and transparency. Now, not
But
everybody's going to buy into that,
Mhm.
right?
But leaders
Hmm.
also have to be willing to hear the honest answer, because
Yes.
I was on the team for, we've got all this real estate, we need to bring people in house, and I was the voice of, maybe it's time to think of another way. 2020 and the COVID years taught us something. And if it
Right.
didn't, shame on us. What we learned was, we don't have to have people co-located to get work done. And if we are, like you said, making our decisions based on space, let's make some different decisions. Let's lease this space out to somebody else. There are a lot of other small businesses that would be honored to have great office space that they may not be able to acquire on their own because they don't have the credit history or the name recognition or something like that. But you, big organization, may be able to rent out a corner of your office to 20 people who actually do need to work together, because
Yes.
they're in a growth phase and they're doing something that needs to be face to face all the time, and they can come and lease that space at a lower cost, maybe not the cost that you're spending, but it allows you to make something. It's not creating you forcing your team to come in. You can create all the right security protocols so those people can only have access to that space or do something that works in a different way from the way that you've always done it. And that, I
Yeah.
think, is the challenge, is that a lot of leaders don't like to think transformationally, and they don't like to think in a different way. They want, again, from that place of control, this is what it looked like before 2020, and I want that back. The world shifted. Why didn't you?
Yeah. And it's also to this outdated thinking that I'm paying you for 40 hours worth of work. So I need to see you do 40 hours worth of work. And it's the quiet hum that people are not they're not recognizing the fact that not every job requires 40 hours, right? And that's not the exchange of time for money, especially when you move into the salary space. You are not paying me to be have my butt in my seat for 40 hours. You are paying me because of my level of expertise that I have that I bring to this role to execute
Mhm.
the role. If I can do that in 20 hours, the 20 hours does not matter, right? The time does not matter. It's the ability to execute the role, right? And that's where we start moving out of transactional into more not performance, but like project based, right?
Mhm.
Outcome results driven. So yeah, I believe me, we could go on this rabbit hole, this tangent for a long time.
I just want to jump back in on the 40 hour
Yeah,
a week concept. One, that's an outdated modality from the World War II
50s.
times, and
Yes,
that again, it is driven mostly for your transactional worker who is trading dollars for time. And
that's right.
that, if you're trading dollars for time, one, you can require those people to be in the office. I don't have a problem with it. You want to see them for 40 hours, great. But again, AI is going to take that away really, really soon, and you're not going to see them or the AI agent, those agentic AI, those bots, you're not seeing them. So if your leadership style is requiring you to see the work getting done in the age of agentic AI, you are going to be lost in a way that you don't even understand, because you don't see a bot working, and you don't see a bot doing 40 hours worth of work, because they're probably doing 40 hours worth of work in 4 hours. That's a whole different conversation. But you, as a leader, are really not seeing the work get done anyway. And for all of the people, like you said, who are salaried workers, they're not paid, they're not trading dollars for time, they're trading experience for money.
That's right.
And those are two mind shifts that we, as leaders, organizations, the country, and work people, need to recognize. Either it's transactional, dollars for time, or it is thought leadership, dollars for experience. And there's no
Right.
time limit on dollars for experience.
That's right. That's right. Have you ever heard the scenario where the plumber is called in? There's a major leak underneath the sink. The kitchen sink is just spewing water, right? And the plumber comes in, and the owner's standing there. The plumber says, "Okay, I can fix it." And he goes down there, fix it. 5 minutes. Writes an invoice, $1,200. And the owner says, "But it took you 5 minutes to do it." Rewrites the invoice to say, uh, uh, 11 or sorry, $5 for the part,
Mhm.
$1,195 to know which part needed to be fixed.
Right.
You
Mhm.
cannot measure the value of experience, right? In the same way that we do this transactional, right?
Mhm.
Because someone who has, been a plumber for 5 minutes, it may take them much longer,
Yep.
and that actually may end up being a $2,400 bill
Mhm.
if you're paying them hourly, right? There's a value in the experience. And so when we start putting the weight on something else, right, on only the time, then we're completely missing the value of actually solving that problem faster,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
So Okay, so now let's talk about belonging and how to create greater belonging and a sense of accountability in the workplace, right? So you and I both know that casual culture is not casual Fridays, right? It is not pizza parties. It is not any of that performative behavior that we were just discussing. It's how people feel when no one's watching. It's that Sunday scaries. Are they feeling that way before Monday? So let's talk about how leaders can rebuild that sense of belonging, even in a remote environment. So, Melanie, how do you measure culture without making it a checkbox, right? Or, as I would say, I loathe engagement surveys because only when they're not utilized, right? And so, how do we not make this just another performative or transactional event or survey that we're sending out to our teams? How do we kind of create this culture without manufacturing it through surveys?
So my first answer is be real, especially in 2025. People respect honesty.
Right.
You can tell them that the world is on fire, and it might be. But if you tell them and it's true, they can work with that.
Yeah.
We are no longer in this era of fluff. And it reminds me, many years ago, I worked for an organization. We were probably 300 to 500 people, and our culture was amazing, and it was driven from the top down. Our president was one of those people who wanted to know everybody that worked there and wanted to know their lives. And it was an organization where I know I did not have Sunday dreary. I would go into work on Sundays because I loved the culture. I loved what we were doing. I loved what we were working towards. And here, 25 years later, I can call one of the people that I worked with, and we just have a conversation about how great it was to work there and how we've been searching for that environment since then. So the
Yeah.
culture is about the people. It is always about, are we honest about what's going on? What are we honest about where we are in the organization? Are we honest about the money? Are we distributing the money fairly? Because that's the next thing. If you are underpaying your people because of whatever your reason is, are you being honest with them about how you value them? And those are the things that set the culture. You can look on Glassdoor or any of these places when they talk about, yeah, we don't get paid well. Oh, the culture isn't good, and they're on the internet talking badly about the company. When the culture is good, people are paid well because they're respected. In organizations, I've worked in organizations like in entertainment. Sometimes the salaries are low, but it's from that perspective of these people are getting some amazing experience. They are having conversations with people they never would have had conversations with. They're doing work that they wouldn't have ever been able to get that exposure doing if they had followed a traditional path and worked in a regular Monday through Friday kind of company. So the money may be low, but you never hear bad things about those companies because the people are getting the value. So it's all about the value proposition for the employee. The money has to balance out the experience. And if I'm having a bad experience and I'm not getting paid well, you're not giving me good benefits, and you talk to me like I'm a child when I'm at work, why would you think anything that you put on an engagement survey really matters to me? Because you have
Mhm.
done all of the things to prevent me from having a good life. And when we think about what work is, nobody goes to work because they wake up in the morning and, at 18 years old and say, I just want to go and serve. Those people go into the foreign service, they do mission work, they do all of that. The rest of us get up every day because we want to have money to take care of ourselves, our families, our lives, and have some wonderful experiences in the world. And we work jobs that are going to be able to provide that. But if we can't have that, the culture isn't going to change how I feel about how I come here. And so
Right.
that's how you build that culture. And that's how you do it without having a survey and say, I really want you to have a best friend at work. I remember that was something I was on the team talking about, building the employee survey, the engagement survey, to find out what, why are people coming to work? What makes them come to work? Your best friend, having a best friend at work is not the biggest thing that's going to happen. Because I've never had a best friend at work, and I come all the time because I come for the check.
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
organizations need to stop dancing around the fact that the check is the reason they come. The work is the way that they demonstrate that they like the check. Those things have to really be in alignment.
100%. And that evolution of having that best friend at work, I've heard it referred to as having like your person, and to your earlier point about, having lost the water coolers were an opportunity for people to, to collaborate or to come together and to kind of decompress. You don't want them commiserating about the fact, I don't know why we have to be here. What is this?
Mm-hmm.
So you want them to feel energized about the work that they are doing. And to your point, part of that is the compensation. And that compensation comes in monetary. It also comes in the opportunity, right? Like you're calling out the experience that they're getting. I mean, otherwise, why would internships ever be a thing? Because I mean, I live in the LA area, so there are tons of opportunities. People will take a huge pay cut just to work in the in the entertainment
Yes.
business, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it aligns with what their future goals are. They're trying to get access, get the experience, get access to the right people.
Mm-hmm.
So this measurement of it's not always just the dollar for dollar value, it's the value that they can get from also to being part of the environment, right? That growth that comes with being part
Mm-hmm.
of that experience. So to your point, I think a lot of people, sometimes it's because if it's not measurable, then it's not important. Well, no, there are a lot of intangibles that we cannot measure, right? But they come out in the engagement surveys. They come out with the way that people are volunteering for work, right? If someone is folding their arms and saying, that's not my job, that tells you your culture,
And
right?
it tells
And
you
that,
it tells you that your culture is not growing. You use
yes.
the term growth, and growth is a metric, and
Yeah.
individual growth is a metric. I have worked in organizations where there have been people that have been in the same job for 10, 15, 20 years, and then they want to understand why the culture is the way it is, because you haven't taken the time to invest in that person who's been in that same role. They're loyal, but they may not know how to transcend the corporate ladder, and you
Yeah.
have to do that for some people and help them
Yeah.
understand what an opportunity looks like and how to go for an opportunity. I've worked with people in my business who have been in those long-term roles, and when I say, well, why didn't you go for the promotion? Well, I just figured they'd see that I was doing great work and they'd promote me. Nobody's ever gotten promoted that way. You get promoted because you are experienced, you are exposed, you are talking about what I want to do next. And if you don't have a vision for yourself about what you want to do next, ask somebody else to give you a vision. But you've got to be able to talk about it, or you're going to be in the same role for 10, 20 years. And that and
100%.
growth in an organization needs to be measured for organizations who are talking about developing and having a good culture. Your culture also you have to be able to quantify that people are moving throughout the organization into new opportunities, and what opportunities are you creating. And it can't just be a scenario where we say we have a growth model, but somebody has to either die or move in order for somebody to grow. There has to be a
Say
growth
that.
model that is individual, that allows someone to have expansive experience even at the same level in the same role, but they are gaining new skills so that if they left, they can go use that somewhere else. Or if that opportunity opens up, it may not be linear, it may be on another team. It opens up and they're ready. Though I
Right.
have worked also in organizations where it's like, you got great skills in this role, you have mastered this role, but you don't have any skills for any other role within the company because we haven't done anything to invest in you. And the linear role is never going to open because that person is not trying to leave.
Okay, so now this comes to my favorite part of the show where we get to decode the generation because I would not be the generational translator if I didn't try to at least try to help to bridge this gap between what was said and what was actually meant. Every guest, I ask a question about what is a word, a phrase, a term, something that you think that the internet is getting wrong, or perhaps maybe across the generations that's just causing some conflict. And Melanie, you chose the paying your dues, which is one of my favorite because I hear this all the time. Now let's decode this. What does pay your dues really actually mean? So, Melanie, I'm curious. When you hear leaders talk about paying their dues, what do you think that they're really trying to protect? Is it culture? Is it control, like we've discussed? Is it comfort? Is it something else? What do you think?
So I actually see it differently. Paying dues, I think, needs a new name. It's the experience layer. It's how do you get the basic foundation, it's understanding of how to do whatever that job is. And so I had a Gen Z person working with me, and I run an entrepreneurial kind of thing, and so I'm fast paced startup. Let's throw it at the wall, see if it works, which theoretically should work for a Gen Z person. However, my employee didn't have any personal structure, any um, understanding of how work gets done, and so the creativity was very linear and very unexposed and unsophisticated. And it made me realize, oh, you got to have a person that's been in the workforce that knows what standards look like. Because as a young person, and I was the same young person, like, throw me in, coach, I'm ready. Yes, you're ready, but you don't know what this environment looks like, and you don't know what good looks like. You don't know how to put together a good PowerPoint presentation. Gamma or Quora or any of those AI tools aren't going to give you what you can take to a boardroom. They'll give you what you could take and put it out on the internet, but it's different. And so to me, paying dues is really just getting that foundational experience. And it I hated it as a young person coming out of school and saying, I'm ready to, lead this team. No, you're not, because you don't know what it looks like to write a good professional email. It's not the
Mm,
same thing as having a conversation. And so it's those basic things that you need to know. And a lot of times when organizations say we need somebody with experience, they need someone with experience, not specifically in that thing. That may not be it, but they need somebody that understands the basic rules of working so you don't have to go back and say, oh, you can't do that. You got to understand, and it's all a matter of where in their evolution the company is and their time and ability to train that. And that's why you mentioned internships earlier. I think internships are phenomenal, and everybody that can get one, I don't care what it is, they need to go out and get one, because that's your foundational piece to do the bumps, because everybody knows you're an intern, and so they expect you not to know anything. And if you make one of those political mistakes, like you wrote your email like you were writing to your friend, people are going to correct you and it's going to be okay. But when they're paying you as a full-time brought on employee, they're expecting you to have a certain amount of professional understanding and acumen that it takes time to develop. When I look back on my first probably 3 to 5 years working, those 3 to 5 years were just learning how to be a good basic employee. I was already a great person, but understanding, we didn't even have email, but writing a memo or those things, those are the basic foundational things about paying your dues. You've got to learn the basics. I agree that back in when we started working as Gen X, a lot of that was just a lot of abuse and ridiculousness to show that you're loyal.
Yeah.
That out the door. I agree. Some of that was just ridiculous. But I do think that even today, the dues paying, yes, some people will look at a millennial or Gen Z and think that they're not as committed or dedicated. But I think the leaders who have stayed with the times and who are good leaders and who are progressive thinkers, they know that that's not the issue that Gen Z and millennials have. It's that, like you said, they want boundaries. They're not trying to live their lives for the company store. They want to have a life because they truly are working for the money to go live the life that we have promised them that they could have and that they never saw their parents be able to retire to. They're like, well,
Yeah.
if I'm never going to be able to retire and Social Security is going to be gone, let me go out and enjoy this life while I can, instead of when I'm 55, 65 years old, my hips are out, I can't walk up Mount Kilimanjaro anymore, and I don't want to jump out of a plane at 65, but at 25, sure, why not? Those are the things that I think paying dues, and I think those are the dues that the millennials and Gen Z are paying that are much better than the dues that we paid, because we gave our lives to the companies and we're not jumping out of planes anymore. But I think that clocking out at 5 o'clock is a good boundary. Be done, but start at 8 o'clock if you're going to clock out at 5. Do, like,
Mm.
stick within the rules. Identify the landscape on which you are playing, and then work within that. But learn while you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've had some really great points because the to your point, we do not come into or we need a soft landing, right? Coming into the work environment with being able to make mistakes. I think we have started the start of many conversations
Yes.
that we could have in this conversation. So, and with the sake of time, because I certainly definitely appreciate and respect your time, Melanie. I am so grateful to you for giving us your insights and your expertise. And I know that so many people listening to this and or watching will certainly want to connect with you. So give us some little tidbits. This will all be in the show notes as well. But tell us how people can connect with you. I'm going to put your QR code directly to your LinkedIn on the screen. But tell us, how can others connect with you?
So LinkedIn is the best way. But you can email me. You can email Melanie, Melanie, and I see that's on the screen, Melanie at sisyphushr.com. And that's sisyphush.com. Um, and go to my website, which is www.sisyphushr.com. Woohoo! You got good technology. Love it. Yes. And any kind of way. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am there frequently because I am always talking about something related to my business. As I'm growing, I'm having coaching intensives. I do leadership coaching. I do um, resume realignments, LinkedIn reviews, everything related to HR. And I do HR system transformation coaching. So organizations that are putting in HR systems and they need either their leadership to change and buy in, or if they just need guidance on how that system transformation needs to go. I do all of that. So you can reach me on my website or any of those locations. And I'm glad to talk because as I see, we're at an hour and I'm still ready to talk some more. So reach out.
You know, you and me both, Melanie, and thank you so much for being here today. I definitely want to make sure and to encourage, if you have not connected with Melanie yet, please use that QR code to connect with her because her not only is her content insightful and helping organizations really to kind of bridge that gap and to close that gap, that HR gap within their organizations, you need to connect with Melanie. So
Thank
use her
you.
website, all of the show notes on how to connect on all of her social handles will be in the show notes. So definitely connect with Melanie. And Melanie, thank you very much for your time and your insights today. So if today's episode has made you rethink what culture means, I want you to share it, tag us, share it on LinkedIn, share it on whatever platform you're seeing this on, or a platform that you frequent, and tag us, because I'd love to hear how your team is redefining what this connection looks like and feels like in this new era as workforce is really actually starting to evolve. Until next time, this has been the Generational Edge. I am your generational translator, Christina Green. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you on the next one.